All right, what's going on? Let us know if we're live. Are we live? Are we live? Because
You don't have your right microphone.
we have to talk about the New York Giants Hard Knocks episode 2. That's something that we have to talk about. But the thing is that we can't talk about that unless we are live. I do have the right microphone. Microphone now.
Now you do. Now you're good.
I did before. I think your headphones are messed up. Are we live? All right, people are saying that we're live. So we are live on this Tuesday evening to talk about the Giants Hard Knocks episode 2. And my big takeaway from this is that they showed them trying to trade up with the Patriots at 3, right? And there was a teaser for something that hasn't happened yet of John Mayer looking like on draft day. Like if we have this, make this trade, I'll have palpitations. I think I said that wrong. Palpitations. I don't know. And
palpitations.
When we heard like the Giants were trying, right? Like up until, close up to the draft to getting that third pick to assumedly go get Drake May. And then you see Drake May on the whiteboard and how like quickly he was able to get that back and adjust on some stuff. And the Drake May pain is back. But I'm shocked that they showed him talking to the Patriots and all that.
Bobby, that was awesome, man. That was awesome. Some people thought episode 1 was better. I thought that was way better. Also, I'll be accepting apologies now from even some media members that sent us text messages saying you guys are crazy. They're never going to show it. Well, they all got the chance to see every episode already, and they all got a chance to do their write-ups and everything like that. Still haven't gotten an apology from anybody. Waiting for an apology from one particular media member who was very vocal about that not happening. And even there were some people that doubted that the Giants even tried to trade in the first place. Now we don't know, we'll see what actually happens on draft day. That actually makes me excited to see what happens on draft day now, that they're not just going to wash everything under the rug, that maybe we will see in the war room them trying to trade up with the Patriots or even draft day or even before they get in the war room, right? Because we had a pretty good idea that they were not going to trade up with the Patriots during the day on Thursday, where the morning there was some optimism, and then draft day, once the afternoon, and then once 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock got close, we basically knew that the Patriots weren't going to trade. So I'm interested to see the timeline on how that unfolds, because I'm actually confident they may show it now because they sprinkled it in the combine. You're muted.
Hard Knocks is creating a storyline, right? So they're not going to put they didn't put the Brian Burns at the Senior Bowl thing randomly, right? There's probably a lot of clips of talking about trades and stuff like that. They don't put it in randomly. It is building up to that draft night, right? Like all the Brian Burns stuff is building up to the Giants trading for him, right? Like there's probably a lot more Christian Wilkins conversations, which I want to talk about. If the Giants signed Christian Wilkins, we'd be hearing more about that than the Brian Burns, idea of trading for him. So it's pretty much confirmed, and it brought back pain because I really wanted Drake May as the Giants quarterback. I would have moved heaven and earth to go get him. And unfortunately, the Giants weren't able to do that. And I thought Drake May and Caleb Williams were super, again, it's a small clip, right? And sometimes from the outside in, you can, you're looking at one thing of football and yeah, that's pretty normal. But they didn't show much of Jaden McCarthy, and they showed Jaden Daniels. And I was like, man, Caleb's impressive. Drake May's impressive. Jaden Daniels, I think the clip they put out on social did him a little dirty. Yeah. Because it's the answer is not throw. I still think he should have said the route. Not throw a touchdown, but that was a play that he drew up. That wasn't the Giants drawing it up. Which is a play that the Giants love to run, but he drew up that play. So I thought they did him, but he kind of struggled to get the formation. Forgot to talk about spit out the protection, which I've learned that's a Brian Dable go-to. He did that to us in Detroit, and now if he does it again. If he does it again, I'm going to throw the touchdown. That's I'm throw the touchdown.
That's the first thing I thought of.
I'll say slot fade. So yeah, it's just kind of very clear. I know Saquon will probably dominate some of the national media stuff, and we'll talk about that. I'm a little more interested to see what resolution we get on Xavier McKinney, but Christian Wilkins was on there. So, do you have anything else besides the fact that it's confirmed that they wanted to trade up for pick 3? They didn't do that to not take a quarterback. So any idea of the last episode of they're all in on Daniel Jones? That's clearly they were all in on Daniel Jones. They wouldn't even entertain a trade for pick 3 because it's going to cost a ton, and you're not doing that for not a quarterback.
No, and they knew it during the combine. It wasn't, they put the emphasis on we're going to talk with these quarterbacks. They showed it. Now I think they do that every year. I don't think that's just a unique thing to the
meeting with the quarterbacks
draft. Yeah.
They do. Like they met with Willis and Pickett,
but like you said, Hard Knocks is telling a story, and the story that they're telling right now is, they didn't include an interview with Joe Alt. Like some people were, before the Hard Knocks. I love how there were some people that carry water for the Giants were very much like, oh well, the Giants maybe even wanted to trade up for Joe Alt. Like, that probably never happened.
If it did, it's like a fireable offense if you're willing to trade up for Joe Alt.
Yeah. But they did start off, you mentioned with Xavier McKinney and seeing how that unfolds. We basically start off the episode with Joe Shane going, holy cow, the cap increased more than they thought. They went pretty conservative. And, one of the things I know we debated on this show, Bobby, was, okay, so the cap goes up. Do you stick to your plan, stick to your process, or does that actually change things for the Giants in free agency? I forget what you said, but I was of the opinion of, it shouldn't really change things. I think you should kind of take that added cap as added value and not really dramatically change your plans. But they, Shane did mention that McKinney is more in play now that the cap went up and we can do more things, get more flexible. Christian Wilkins is brought up, and then Brian Burns is brought up.
Yeah, so with Xavier McKinney, I'm still unclear on how all that went down. It seems like we'll get.
I think we'll get clarity.
We'll probably get when they do the actual free agency episode. But brought up like, hey, maybe that changes things with McKinney. With Saquon, it always seems like Shane's trying to make like not even a jab, just being like giving reasons of why they're not going to bring Saquon, which we'll talk about. But with McKinney, it's like a little unclear. And then he was talking with Brandon Brown at the combine and saying, hey, maybe what we'll do is we'll send them an offer, but say, hey, this offer is not going to be on the table next week because they were coming up on the franchise tag deadline. And seeing if he takes it. And then Brandon Brown responded with, that would probably change things with Wilkins. Which, here's something. Would you rather have Christian Wilkins, $21 million, a second-round pick, and a fifth-round pick? Or Brian Burns at $28 million and losing a second-round pick and a fifth-round pick?
I'm going to tell you something. I think I'd rather have Christian Wilkins.
I would too.
Yeah.
And that I mean, I love Christian Wilkins, and I think having a dominant defensive tackle duo would have been so nice. I know they still need edge, right? And we need Kayvon to take a step up, and Brian Burns can affect. Brian Burns is obviously going to affect the quarterback a little more, but I would have rather just kept the second and fifth and went and got Christian Wilkins.
I think that first of all, having 2 second-round picks and having that pick at what was it, 36, right?
Yeah,
it was the fucking 36. Which I love the talent and I love the crop that was around there. And
Wilkins got 27 average annual value.
I think Wilkins and Dex together as a duo are way more dominant than Burns and Kayvon as a duo.
Oh yeah, that's not even one. That's just because Dex is the more dominant player, but also Christian Wilkins is better at his job than what Brian Burns is at his job. But the edge pressure that Brian Burns creates is more valuable than like the run defense or Wilkins as a pass rusher.
Now they talked about
Wilkins is much better of a two-way player. So actually Wilkins got 27 mil.
Now here's the thing. They talked about Wilkins way more this episode where the first episode was like, oh, Brian Burns, Dan Morgan, blah, blah, blah. I think they mentioned Burns a couple times, but I think they emphasized Wilkins a lot more this episode than they did in the first, where I honestly thought at the time that we saw the first episode, I thought that Christian Wilkins was just the silly little list of players that they read at defensive line and then running back. Like, all right, this is thanks for the biography on Joe Mixon. But they highlighted Wilkins more. So I wonder if in episode 3, are they going to be shocked at the number that Las Vegas is offering? Are they going to be shocked at the number that Wilkins is demanding? And then is Burns the pivot Who's the priority? That's basically what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I guess that's something we can look forward to in the next episode. With Saquon, right? Confirmed what we essentially knew, that Joe Shane let him hit free agency and was going to see what the market offered him, and then see if you have an opportunity to match. I would assume that they don't match, right? Saquon's campus said they didn't offer me a contract, and that's been reported as well. But even through all that, right? Because Shane will say things that make it seem like wanting Saquon, but he just says a lot of things to make it seem where he doesn't, right? Like where Rossetti was saying, Chris Rossetti, the director of pro scouting, was like, "Oh, 26 is going to want that Jonathan Taylor money," and he's like, let's relax. And
They
then
were
talking
also
with his agent of saying like the numbers are undeniable, right? The trends are undeniable. Talking about running back and injury. And then also when they were doing the PR stuff before the press conference, where Shane kind of bit back. He's like, "Yeah, well, Saquon doesn't want to be tagged in. I wanted him to, accept the contract when we offered him a lot of money last year, and he didn't do that." So, so it just seems like anytime Saquon's been brought up, that Shane is giving more reasons to not do it than to do it.
Yeah, was that Dion Dargan? Oh, I want to get to the whole media training
Dion
thing. That was Dion Dargan. So when he's talking to Dion Dargan, the guy in the white giant sweater at the combine before they talked at that press conference.
One of their PR guys.
Yeah, that was one of their PR guys. Dude, Joe Shane, like that scene, Joe Shane does a very good job, and it was very, very cool to see the behind the scenes of even your posture, and the way that you position your body. Even that is going to be interpreted by people online. I would like to think that Dion Dargan is even slighting us in some ways, because I used to do that with Dave Gettleman.
Well, Dion blocked me at one point.
Yeah, man. So
but I like Dion Dargan.
That was cool. That was cool to see that process, like literally the lines that he's practicing with Dion Dargan, and then see the press conference unfold. The one thing that Joe Shane has always been bad about, man, he's been bad. He has not been able to hide his disdain for this process with Saquon Barkley, his agent, his representatives, his people, or even Saquon himself. He's done a bad job at hiding it. We've talked about it. And now even seeing it unfold.
Even the day after the 2022 season, where like he talked about Saquon in a way different manner than we did Daniel Jones.
Basically guaranteed that Jones would be back, which was a mistake in my opinion, because that gave Jones a lot of leverage. But totally dismissing Saquon Barkley, especially after the great season that he had in 2022 before the magic number of 27. But man, even that phone call at the end, dude, they don't like each other. They don't.
I don't think they like the way it's handled business-wise. I don't think they actually have any beef with each other personally. I just think Shane doesn't believe in paying a running back, and Saquon is coming from the point of view of like, I've given everything, and you guys have treated me like run of the mill player. I've been like Mr. Perfect, all that. So I wouldn't go too much of that. The PR stuff is a little more run of the mill now with Joe Shane, because he speaks so few times a year. Like you said, there's a little more like, hey, your posture and stuff. Because the PR guy's job is to read social media. People are like, wow, they're actually reading Twitter. Yeah, that's literally what a PR person's job is to do. And like that happens there with every single Brian Daboll press conference. Dion Dargan or Pat Hanlon or whoever's running it that day, he gives them a list of like, hey, this guy wrote this story saying this. Yeah. This is a thought that's going out there. So like I'm not saying Joe Shane and Brian Daboll aren't reading every story. They read some stories, but they get a list of like, hey, this has been what's been written. This is what's been written before every single time they talk to the press. Yeah,
for sure. What else do we want to touch on? What's the next thing? How about Malik Neighbors and
so I
scout.
I missed a little bit of that. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so you had a scout in the beginning. I bet you he was the area scout for that area. I didn't catch his name.
Yeah, they didn't put his name. I looked for it.
And he said basically there's a lot there with Malik Neighbors' personality that we got to get in front of him, like anybody. We got to get in front of him and see if he fits what we're about. So that's what they said in East Rutherford, and then they go to Indianapolis, and Daboll has the combine interview, and I thought that back and forth was awesome. Where that's the back and forth that I think you basically saw of.
Now, Neighbors was being very meek because he was in a combine interview but he was also honestly came through where he's like, yeah, if I'm not getting the ball, I'm not going to be happy about that. And Daboll
appreciated the honesty, which was cool.
Yeah, and then Brandon Brown, made a good point where it's like, who is great at that position or corner position, who isn't, like, have some type of that attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Which when you're, because like you need guys like that on your team. You need some of that dog mentality. And Brian Dable called him a dog when talking about him as a player. The thing you need to make sure of is, one, he's not going to do things to sabotage the team. And then legal shit, right? Like how he got arrested. Like, is that behind you? You're not going to be fucking around and going out with, with a gun without an open carry license or whatever, like shit like that, right? And they're still, even though they drafted him, I'm sure they still have some worry, right? Like that video of him in the strip club, throwing away money. While it's not that big a deal in a vacuum, I'm sure they don't love seeing that, right? That's reckless, but that's what happens when you're, rich and young. You do shit like that. It's just don't lead to anything that's going to get you in legal trouble, and don't sabotage the team. But they even mentioned, like, we got to make sure the quarterback is willing to, take some bark back at him without it like really affecting him. And like, yeah, Jones is fine with that. Like, Jones isn't going to be phased because a wide receiver's, pissed off because he was open and didn't get the ball or something.
Yeah. For sure.
I need to rewatch. Shane Bowen, I think, said something about like how much he liked Tyler Nubin. They showed Jerome Henderson working with Andrew Phillips, but nothing really learned there. Let's see.
Did you see that this was at the beginning of the combine where they talked about JJ McCarthy's measurables are being close to Patrick Mahomes, and then Shane and Dennis Hickey laugh, and I like to think that's not like a. I like to think that's a slight to JJ McCarthy because of my position, our position.
Yeah. So they didn't even let McCarthy finish like the play thing. So they kind of brushed over that. We talked about, Caleb Williams and Drake May were really impressive. Jaden Daniels wasn't as bad as the clip made him out to be today, but you could tell there was a difference, like football IQ wise, with Caleb and May compared to Jaden Daniels.
I did like, I know this isn't talking,
which is hard. Like it's like, I don't know how NFL quarterbacks do it. Like I truly don't. And then you see like the helmet cam that like Tua has used in Miami. It's like, how the fuck do NFL quarterbacks keep all this knowledge, repeat it, know where everything's going, and then have that type of vision and have to make a decision where we're like, if you hold the ball for 3 seconds, you're out back there for an eternity. It's like, I don't know how NFL quarterbacks fucking do it.
It was a slight that they laughed at JJ Mora. What was I going to say? It was awesome to hear. I know this isn't talking Bears, but it was awesome to hear that Brian Dable's like, you can make that throw to Caleb Williams? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, oh yeah, I throw back shoulders and stuff like that. I last week I was able to pay. I was trying to get clips and stuff. I'm actually going to rewatch this one.
Yeah, I actually do want to rewatch.
John says Saquon Barkley is no longer a Giant. Move on. I'll talk about the players. John, shut the fuck up. We're watching a Hard Knocks episode, and he's a central figure in it. Yeah. What are you even watching this for, dumbass? What an annoying like. What do you go? It's July. Go do something. Go spend time with your family if you don't want to hear about Saquon Barkley on a Hard Knocks recap.
Yeah. Oh, this
drives me fucking nuts.
This was fun. This was funny too. Because we're talking about Wilkins, talking about Burns. We're talking about what that defensive line can look like. I did think it was funny that they left in that Joe Shane said then I can play corner.
They sacrificed getting a corner, right? Yeah. Like we talked about that in the first episode where like corner was like the number one thing he mentioned. And, he told Bowen, and hey, that is a huge, we're recording for our Football Today show, team profiles and projections. And like, that's my biggest like personal worry for just this season for the Giants is like secondary, man. You're really relying on Deonte Banks, not just like progressing, but becoming a legit number one corner. And then you're still not in a great place with that secondary. So, that, I lost my train of thought there. What was I saying? I totally lost. You got to stop looking at the chat.
TPPs.
Oh yeah. They sacrificed not getting a corner.
Yep.
Outside of Andrew Phillips for, to go get Brian Burns. So it would be, we won't get it from this series, but I would love to know, what do the Giants do if they don't trade for Brian Burns? Are they bringing back McKinney? Are they paying $27.5 million for Christian Wilkins?
I think we're going to find out next week because next week is going to be free agency. They're going to trade for Brian Burns on Tuesday for Tuesday's episode. So I think we will find out. That's my main question is.
I think we can safely say Saquon was really never part of the plan in Shane's mind, even though he had to play the part.
No.
but McKinney was, right, and Christian Wilkins was, and what does that lead for everybody else?
Yeah.
Um,
I did like, as we're talking about maybe we'll put a bow on Saquon right here and just get the rest of the
you know what?
the
I'm
rest
going
of
to
the
talk about
Saquon
Saquon for
notes
the
out
next
there.
10 minutes.
We'll just get. I have like 2 more Saquon notes that we haven't talked about. Joe Shane did mention the Ring of Honor, and he didn't mention the word legacy, but basically was talking about Saquon's legacy and did use that as a negotiation tactic back on Saquon Barkley. And then we didn't talk about this on the preview for next week. The offer that I guess was never offered was 3 years, $12.5 million average annual value with $25 million guaranteed for Saquon Barkley. What did he get from Philly?
I think it was 14 per year. Let me look it up real quick.
And, one of the things that Joe Shane said is, okay, you can take this money, 12 and a half a year, 3 years, 25 million guaranteed, or you can take.
That was in the preview for next week. I didn't watch that.
Yeah, the little preview for next week at the end of the episode. He said that's the numbers that he said, or he said you can take $1 million, $1 million or $2 million elsewhere to, go play somewhere else, or you could stay here for a couple more years and be a Ring of Honor member.
He got 12.5 per, a little over 12.5 per year for 3 years and $26 million fully guaranteed.
So it was exactly what Joe Shane said. You take $1 million more guaranteed to go somewhere else, dude.
If they do that, then Saquon looks really bad. If that,
I don't think
if that's a conversation with the agent and Saquon pass it up for $1 million guaranteed.
No, that's exactly what happened. That's
we'll see. That might be what they offered the year
teaser
before or something, right? We'll I'm not going to say that until I see that. Maybe go back and watch the preview. But if Saquon will look awful if that's the case. I'll go watch the teaser again. But that seems similar to what they offered him last year, where they offered him $22 million, but it was like it was like $12.5 million per year.
I mean, you could say whatever you want, man. I think that they legit just don't like each other. I think the negotiation of this has just bothered the living shit out of Joe Shane. And it's had to bother Saquon too.
We'll see.
I think it's already happened. I think we're just seeing it. The little slight comments to the other, to the other people in the front
Joe
office.
Shane's having to fight fires in the building of people who want to keep Saquon, and
I bet you that's part of it. That's part of this story, is that he is fighting, and it's annoying for him. Which is another reason why I'm glad he's gone, because just to get
Nick
rid
Surge
of this.
said just rewatch with the subtitles, and Shane said I offered him in regards to 12.5 million average and 20. That could be last year's. That sounds like last year's offer. Okay. Even though we heard that it was $22 million for the guaranteed. So we'll see. Let's see. Do you think Brian Daboll can run a sub 740? I think it would be really close. Like, I think it'd either be a 6.95 or a 7.12.
No, he can't. I mean, just to compare it, I'll give you my 40 from this year again. And it was 6.34.
So you ran a sub 70. Brian Daboll was like a college athlete. Even if you get fat, you still keep some of that athleticism. Yeah, but I still think he can break a sub 7. I'm actually with Brian Daboll on that. They were all doubting him. I think he can do it. And he gave him the bird and said, "Fuck y'all."
I'm gonna make a compilation of that. That was like a running.
Daboll is the funniest guy in the room.
Yeah.
It's probably a pretty boring room of NFL scouts and shit, but he's the funniest guy in the room.
That was a running bit for a couple minutes. I do want to make a compilation of all the times that Brian Daboll was like, "I could do it." We're like, "No."
Yeah, especially now that he's lost a little weight. Like, I think I definitely.
Oh, it's a good point. Do it. No, he can't do it.
We'll go for a few more minutes. Let's get some questions. Let me go through my notes and see if I didn't miss anything.
It was cool to hear. I wrote down her name, Hannah Burnett, and some of the college area scouts. It was cool. It was cool to hear them. I loved how Hannah Burnett said this guy's going to roll, and then Xavier Worthy goes out and rolls and does exactly that. It didn't take a genius to really figure that out, but still, I loved it. It was awesome. What else? What else you got?
I want to revisit. I don't know if we hit it directly, but with Brian Burns, where the two Dan Morgan knew he was never getting 2 firsts, specifically, especially for the Giants. But they were convinced it was either going to take a 1 or 2 second-round picks. Like, they were convinced. It's kind of like we just recorded a Panthers episode for Team Profiles and Previews. Like, why did you trade this player for a 2nd and 5th round pick? Like, why didn't you make the money, structure the contract whatever way you need to, and let this guy go for a 2nd round pick and a 5th round pick? Like, it's just so mind-numbing why the Panthers would do that. Like, and then they signed older players to their defensive front, and Ashawn Robinson and Jadeveon Clowney. It makes no sense for a team that is not even close to even competing for a playoff spot. It still blows my mind. Like, why did the Panthers do that?
And in the preview, Dan Morgan was talking to Joe Shane. You didn't hear what Dan Morgan said, but you hear what Joe Shane says. Dan, why are we going to throw in a 7? What does a 7th round pick do? So Dan Morgan,
Joe Shane he's the best at his clear-cut best part of the job is trade negotiations.
But also, I think just seeing how Dan Morgan's like, can we do 2 2s? Can we do 2 1s? And then he's like, okay, well, maybe 2 2s. And it wound up being 1 2. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
A 2nd and a 5th round pick.
Throw it into the fire a little bit.
This isn't really to the Giants, but Marvin Harrison Jr. I love listening to his interviews. Like, he's so confident in himself, and I love like I'm not going to train for drills. Like, I'm training to play football. I've shown you how good at football I am. I'm going to train for football. And Mike Groh, the wide receiver coach, tried to get him like, what a shit throw by the quarterback, huh? He's like, nah, I could have made a play on it. He's like, yeah, I know, but that was a shit throw. He's like, no, I'm never going to blame the It's so obvious that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be just a stud and like a pro, like going to last in the league for a long time unless he gets injured. I got to re-listen to what Shane Bowen said on Tyler Noob, and I mean that's kind of it for me. And do we got any questions before we roll?
Well, there's also just the overall big point we've heard Shane talk about it. I think Dable's talked about it, and clearly it's not just a talking point. Like, they believe that the New York market, you gotta be a certain type of dude to handle the New York market, and that's something that they look for. It's something that they pay attention to. I think sometimes we say it, and then like, oh, and then even we talk about sometimes I don't think the New York market
it matters the most when they're talking about quarterbacks specifically too.
I don't think the New York market is like terrible and it's brutal and it's unfair. I just think everything you do, you look at us, what we do, and you look at how many reporters there are. I just think all your moves in practice and then even off the field a little bit. Like, you're just always being watched, man, and everything is going to be talked about and everything is going to be analyzed.
So I don't think Giants beat reporters are particularly tough, but when you listen to like other press conferences and it's like, oh, all these reporters are just blatantly fans of the team. And with the Giants, like, they're not super tough, but it's just like comparatively, so they actually are a lot more tougher.
Right. So they care about that.
Let's see. All right,
dude, it was
awesome.
It was
good. We're almost. It was
awesome
minutes.
It was awesome that they mentioned, and to wrap it up. It was awesome that they mentioned May. Awesome.
Well, not even meant like they put all the quarterback interviews, right? Even if they had no intention of drafting a quarterback, they were going to put those in there anyways. But then they immediately go and show Joe Shane, but like, I'm going to go talk to the Patriots. And he's like, just keep them in mind. He's like, yeah, a few people have said that, but no one's actually made an offer. He's like, yeah. He's like, I'm not going to do anything right now. It might not be until draft day, but just, before you do anything, keep us in mind. And it's just so obvious. Like, it's been reported by others and us that like they wanted to trade for pick number 3 and draft Drake May, and they didn't, and it hurts. It hurts a lot. And Tommy DeVito is probably going to be trending by the end of the night by how many times my tweet of that video quote tweeting about Tommy DeVito has happened. Patriots fans are thanking Tommy DeVito a lot, and then Giants fans are not. But I blame Brian Dable for being a good coach.
Any thoughts change after Shane after these 2 episodes yet?
No. I mean, what have we learned about Joe Shane from this?
If anything, it's affirmed some of the stuff that I
I don't think I've learned anything new. Like, the only people who've learned stuff about Shane are the people who are just like, no, they didn't want to trade for a quarterback or, shit like that.
Or they really wanted Saquon back.
Yeah, so I think, I don't.
It's affirmed some of the things that I like. It's crazy that the only thing that I really don't like right now is just I'm not confident in his ability to draft people.
Yep. All right, that's an episode. Want to keep it under 30 minutes. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you on the next one next week. Let's go Big Blue.